At the age of 20, Nan Xian made her debut and became famous. At the peak of her career at 20.3, she married He Mingxiao. Unexpectedly, on her wedding night, Nan Xian received a contract from her husband and lived a 10-year marriage in name only. Until a sudden disaster struck, she was reborn. Looking at the handsome man sleeping beside her, the first thing Nanxian did was shake him vigorously. He Mingxiao opened his eyes in a daze and saw his little wife's eyes staring at him with intense excitement. He Mingxiao, let's get divorced. After her divorce, Nanxian returned to the entertainment industry, regaining the resources she had stolen from her past life, and joining Unveiled Mysteries, with a strong presence. Cracking goo magic, escaping from islands, and uncovering the secrets of the fox fairy legend from thousands of years ago with extraordinary courage and inconsistent arrogance, it has once again become a hot new star. However, the unintentional rescue of a black cat sparked ambiguous sparks between Nanxian and the cat owner during online conversations, and at the same time, He Mingxiao's frequent gestures of goodwill still made her heart skip a beat. Faced with two sincere emotions, she had doubts about herself. After a reality show recording ended, during Nanxian's live streaming business, He Mingxiao suddenly led 99 IDs with camp names to dominate the fan list, igniting a hot search. After the broadcast, Nan Xian complained about her ex-husband's peacock behavior to her online lover in the ambiguous period. The next second, He Mingxiao heard a few ding-ding sounds from his pocket. Nanxian slowly looked up and said, "Soft on the outside, tough on the inside, rich and noble flower versus persistent and dedicated cat-style CEO, novel keyword. Help. The CEO's ex-husband turned out to be my online crush. No pop-ups, help. My ex-husband, the CEO, is actually my online lover. Download the complete TXT collection, help. The CEO's ex-husband turned out to be my online crush." Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. The Sheath Sword. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The Sheath Sword. Sister, there will be an interview with Charmed magazine tomorrow afternoon. I will pick you up at 10 o'clock to do the styling. By the way, Director Zheng would like to invite you to be a permanent guest for the 10th season of Unveiled Strange Tales. The conditions given are quite good. Shall we take over? Assistant Ding He's message popped up in the notification bar, and Nan Xian stared at the screen for a while before typing a reply. Did variety shows help me push it? The older generation of the He family have rigid thinking. Grandpa He said that since she has become the daughter-in-law of the He family, she should not always show her face on the screen. So she dare not take on any popular variety shows with high national popularity, such as Unveiled Mysteries. After replying to the message, the screen automatically switches back to the page she just browsed. Half an hour ago, the hashtag He Mingxiao Night Club Mysterious Beauty hashtag entry, which was still high on the hot search list, has been completely removed. However, netizens love to watch the excitement, especially with such explosive big melons. Various speculations are flying around, and searching for keywords can reveal that the number of discussions is increasing instead of decreasing. The more you scroll down, the more times the name Wei Ziling is mentioned. It seems that netizens have only identified the protagonist of the incident based on a few blurry sneak photos. The Navy has a rhythm, and Nan Xian is too familiar with this trick. She lost interest for a moment and exited the page to jump to the WeChat chat box. The latest news about the person at the top was still suspended yesterday afternoon. He Mingxiao. Tomorrow night's flight, don't wait for me. Looking up, every message he sent was concise, cold as a robot reporting its itinerary on time. There are only a few updates on moments. The last time I posted a photo was 3 months ago when the He family went on a trip to Australia, and Nan Xian happened to miss the deadline and didn't go. A group photo of 8 people, except for Wei Ziling, an outsider standing next to He Mingxiao, holding his 6-year-old nephew in her arms with a bright and generous smile. At first glance, it looks like a happy family of three. Wei Ziling is a world supermodel and fashion darling, with 1.2 meters long legs and a high-end bone-like face. She is deeply loved by various luxury brands and has won the championship of Top 100 Most Popular Actresses in the World for 3 consecutive times. Her father started a business together with He Mingxiao's father, who had long been sworn brothers with different surnames. Before He Mingxiao and Nan Xian got married, the two families even intended to bring their relationship closer. And what about myself? Despite having a relatively affluent family background, it feels like a world apart from the world's top 100 Weisha group, a gentle appearance, but it is no longer a popular aesthetic pursuit. The declining career has become a typical example of playing a good hand poorly in the industry. Even an enviable marriage is only maintained through a contract. Nanxian's lips slowly raised a self-deprecating bitter smile. On his wedding night 10 years ago, He Mingxiao suddenly disappeared. Anxious, Nanxian finally received a contract from her assistant, which limited their relationship to only nominal terms. Since then, He Mingxiao's attitude towards her has increased significantly. When men pay public rations, they also restrain themselves. Occasionally, Nanxian can feel his loss of control and excessive enthusiasm, but the next day he will leave for a business trip, often without seeing anyone for 10.5 days. As a husband, He Mingxiao fulfilled various obligations perfectly. Except for the lack of love. The sound of the door opening pulled back her drifting thoughts. She turned her head and saw He Mingxiao walking in wearing a bathrobe. The man is tall and handsome in appearance. He has been in a high position for a long time. Even if he doesn't speak, his aura is intimidating, like an unsheathed sword, with a cold gleam around his eyes and eyebrows. He has already passed the age of 30, but time has a particular fondness for him. All that remains in him is the increasingly strong male charm of top-quality wine. It is not surprising that there are always fierce waves and butterflies in the outside world. Just after taking a shower, there was still steam hanging from his hair, with some moisture hanging down. A droplet of water rolled down his throat and slid into the slightly open neckline of the bathrobe. The muscle lines there were tight and powerful, and she immediately recalled the excellent touch when she propped up on it. Her fingers, holding her phone, unconsciously tightened. The bedside slightly sinks, and the faint aroma of men's shower gel seeps into the nose. Why haven't you slept yet? Is there no announcement tomorrow? He Mingxiao's tone remained calm as usual. The gaze of you swept over the unclear black circles under his eyes, thinking of his always densely filled itinerary. The anger that Nanxian had just lifted in her heart suddenly fell again. The thought of questioning that gossip news was suppressed, but my throat still felt uncomfortable as if I had been blocked by a ball of cotton. She simply averted her gaze, got into bed, and threw out a muffled sentence. I'm tired, good night. He Mingxiao's movements paused slightly, looking at the back of her head with some confusion. When he hesitated whether to speak, the phone placed on the bedside table suddenly shook. Seeing that the caller ID was Wei Ziling, he furrowed his brow slightly and pressed the shutdown button to choose to ignore it. But soon after, a second phone call came in, and he had no choice but to walk out of the bedroom with his phone in hand. Upon hearing his low, Wei Ziling, before the door closed, Nanxian's heart suddenly tugged. After waiting for a few minutes like a year, the door was finally opened again, and He Mingxiao got into bed lightly. Nanxian asked, "Who called you so late?" The last light went out, and he spoke calmly, "No one, go to sleep." The bedroom fell into silence, with only 2 breathing sounds echoing one after another. Nanxian will be held in the palm of her hand by Jiao, counting the seconds one by one. The pointer skipped 12 o'clock and entered a new day. She sat up in the darkness, her voice muffled and filled with grievances. He Mingxiao, you missed our wedding anniversary. Thank you for opening this article. Meeting each other is fate. Perhaps you don't have a big feeling about this article yet, but I believe you will definitely like it after reading 10 chapters. If not, Then just pretend I didn't say huh. The full text character has no prototype, please do not substitute it. Main chasing wife crematorium plus pet 1v1, dual C, he, feel free to enter the pit, end of this chapter. Chapter 2. Delayed Sincerity. Don't even want dogs. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Delayed Sincerity. Don't even want dogs the next day. Nan Xian was awakened by the ringing of her phone, and it was Ding He who called. Sister, are you awake? Nan Xian cleared her throat and let out a Then we'll pick you up in half an hour. After getting up and washing up, breakfast was already on the table to welcome her. Knowing that she is prone to edema in the morning and cannot tolerate the bitter coffee, Chen's mother specially made red bean soup, which has just the right temperature and sweetness. Nan Xian, who was ironed with delicious food, let out a comfortable sigh and her eyebrows and eyes relaxed. Seeing that she was in a good mood, Chen's mother's eyes rolled and she quickly walked into the living room, lifting a small paper bag over. Madam, before leaving this morning, Mr. asked me to hand it over to you. He said it was a commemorative gift for you. There is a string of English logos printed on the paper bag, which is Nanxian's favorite jewelry brand. Inside, there is a small jewelry box, and the dark leather surface feels very textured. Judging from this size, it should be earrings. Nanxian paused her fingertips and suddenly thought to herself, did Jiang Te help deliver it this morning? Chen's mother felt so guilty that she didn't dare to look at her, and her fingers twitched restlessly. This is also the gentleman's intention. The smile that had just risen in Nan Xian's eyes instantly turned into indifference. If you miss it, it means you missed it. Don't even give a dog as a gift. With a loud bang, the jewelry box that had just been opened and closed again, the exquisite diamond earrings had not yet appeared before they were once again locked in the darkness. Nan Xian coldly pushed it away, her gaze returning to the red bean soup. Chen's mother looked at the box, then at Nan Xian, who was focused on drinking soup. She moved her lips, but in the end, she didn't say anything. Today's shooting took place in the studio, and it was also her two old partners who did the styling for Nan Xian. Lin Jiaojiao was responsible for makeup, and Su Pan was responsible for hairstyle. The three of them have known each other for many years, both as partners and friends, chatting while putting on makeup, and the topic unconsciously led to Nan Xian. Su Pan pinched a strand of her hair and casually asked, Xian, I heard that Wei Ziling has caused trouble and disgusted you again. Yesterday, she even had a lot of trending topics. Nan Xian was closing her eyes and drawing eyeliner, when she heard that her eyelids trembled. Lin Jiaojiao's brush shifted an inch. She wiped off the wrong part of the drawing and glared at him. You all know it was intentional, you still ask. Nan Xian knew that Su Pan had such a straightforward personality, but she didn't feel offended. She opened her eyes and looked at herself in the mirror. The luxurious and careful maintenance made her face as delicate as dew rose at the age of 33. Her face was painted with the most suitable makeup. Her eyebrows were long and thin, eyeliner was smooth, eyelashes were fine and clear, and her lips were suffused with light powder. Light and graceful, gentle with a smile, like the moon in the water, a fairy in the painting, this is the praise of her fans. What does Wei Ziling look like? She seems to be the focus of the crowd no matter where she is, not only because of her golden ratio figure and hot and sexy attire, but also because of her sunny California smile and straightforward personality. Very few people who have been with her dislike her. It's really a world apart from myself. Nan Xian looked at her smooth, satin-like waist-length hair in the mirror, and suddenly, for some reason, a thought came to her mind and she blurted out, if I dye my hair red, will it look good? Both of them were stunned at the words behind them, looking at her in surprise from the mirror. Lin Jiaojiao widened her eyes and after a moment of thought, she advised, don't worry, your hair has been raised for so many years. If you dye your hair and damage it, it won't be easy to handle. Su Pan nodded in agreement and said, Xian, your temperament belongs to that of a gentle older sister. Your red hair is too bold and loose, only the little idol in the girl group can dye it. That's right. Nanxian curved her lips, but there was no smile in her eyes. Dyeing hair was just a whim, and she understood that what she truly wanted was change. But what exactly needs to be changed? She hasn't figured it out yet. Doo-doo, the dressing room door was pushed open, and Ding He poked his head in. Sister, are you okay? Nanxian regained her composure and stood up, walking towards her. You can take a photo now. The theme of this shoot is Standing at 30. 2 scenes, 2 sets of designs, all filmed in the afternoon. He Mingxiao sent a message this morning asking if she liked the gift. Nan Xian was preparing to reply, and the team responsible for the interview had arrived early. Nanxian then put away her phone, tied her hair behind her with a rubber band and tied a low ponytail, and followed Ding He out. She was interviewed by a male editor surnamed Yu, with a short cut, glasses on, and a serious and non-smiling demeanor. The two quickly entered the topic, and the interview content was personally confirmed by Ding He without any issues. However, halfway through, Ding He, who was watching from the side, was suddenly called away, as if there was something wrong with the photo. Nan Xian caught a glimpse of this scene and instinctively tensed her nerves, slightly tightening her hand stacked on her knee. She had an unpleasant premonition. Editor Yu, sitting across from her, looked at her with great interest, closed his desk, and his eyes hidden behind the lenses suddenly burst into a malicious light. Nan Xian, you have been an actress for 13 years, during which you have produced a total of 9 film and television works, including some famous directors' works. However, the only truly award-winning works are your debut works. When he said this, he deliberately paused and raised his lips to show a subtle smile, as if mocking, the outside world speculates that your flowering period is too short, no longer spiritual, and there are also those who say you cannot balance career and love. What do you think of this? As the words fell, the entire interview room fell into silence, and the sound of needles falling could be heard. Nanxian glanced at the camera and turned to herself. She knew that any slight change in her expression at this moment would not escape the capture of high-definition cameras. In the blink of an eye, she suddenly remembered a news article she had browsed a few months ago, about the acquisition of several small entertainment companies by Weishur Group. This includes the magazine company where Charm is located. The sheep enter the tiger's mouth. These 4 big characters flashed quickly in Nanxian's mind. After the interview, she asked the nanny to drive Ding He back to the company dormitory and drive home by herself. When sitting alone in a quiet car, Nanxian finally relaxed and tightened her nerves for the whole day. She still didn't answer the deliberately difficult question in the end. Because he was right, her flowering period was too short, and the reason behind it was caused by her own actions. At the age of 20, she debuted at her peak and got married at 20.3. At that time, she foolishly thought she could warm her husband's heart. With the admonition of the elders of the He family, she simply faded out of the entertainment industry and did not produce any works for several years. The entertainment industry is cruel, and Nanxian is not irreplaceable. It's easy to quit this circle, but the real challenge is to come back. During the day, Editor Yu's question once again came to mind, as she looked absent-mindedly at the red light at the intersection ahead, her mind in turmoil. What is yourself like before the age of 23? Having a wealthy family, loving parents, and a beloved older brother, she unexpectedly became a leading actress in college and became popular, surrounded by countless praises and envy after the age of 23. Although she has no worries about food and clothing, her husband is neglected, her mother-in-law is rejected, her career is strained, and there is also a woman with impure thoughts who occasionally appears to respond to her. Nanxian unconsciously grasped the steering wheel, her breathing becoming increasingly rapid, and her body trembled slightly, wishing to slap herself in the face with her own hands. Why fall in love with He Mingxiao? Why agree to his proposal? Why would you personally ruin your career? Step by step, the phrase, "I am willing," from 10 years ago left her mired in a quagmire and unable to escape. D. Hey, what are you doing with the driver in front? You're not leaving even when the light is green. Nanxian suddenly regained consciousness, quickly wiping away her tears and stepping on the gas pedal. When the screams reached her ears, she didn't even realize what had happened until she turned her head and a large truck that was crashing towards her was reflected in her instantly tightened pupils. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Disdainful Love. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Disdainful Love. Nanxian suddenly opened her eyes, as if her body could still feel the pain of being hit. She instinctively frowned. Where is this, the hospital? But soon, the incredibly familiar sound of breathing beside her froze her in an instant. She blinked in confusion in the darkness and raised her hand to touch her chest. There are no wounds, no gauze, and no pain. I was hit by a big truck. Why did I lie in my own house without any injuries? Didn't there be a car accident, just a dream? But what happened before? Why don't I have any impression? She sat up with her body propped up and raised her hand to touch the phone by the bedside. The unfamiliar touch left her stunned for a moment, and before she could feel anything strange, she gasped in surprise at the content displayed on the screen. August 15, 2012. She repeatedly pressed the screen to light up, but the brand new 4S in her hand and the time displayed on the system actually told her that she was reborn. Nanxian sat on the toilet seat, staring at her phone without blinking, her fingertips slightly trembling as she slid the screen. International news, entertainment gossip, and even messages from older brothers reminding themselves to stay up late and rest more. It's all the same as 2012 in memory. She pressed the off-screen button and walked to the wash basin, looking at the young face in the mirror, covered in tears. For a long time, the corner of the mouth slowly rises. He Mingxiao is also like what she remembers. At the age of 28, he still retains an indescribable sharpness between his eyebrows and eyes, and his sleeping face is impeccable. Back then, she was captivated by such a handsome and jealous face. However, at this moment, at the age of 33, she had the opportunity to start over again and would not repeat the same mistake. Nanxian almost shook him up with a venting mood. He Mingxiao opened his eyes and was first stabbed by the bedside lamp. After adapting for a while, he saw his wife riding on him in a strange posture. She, who always pays attention to her image in front of her, now has a slightly out-of-control smile on her face, and her eyes exude an excited light as if she is about to conquer the sea. He was startled and his drowsiness dissipated. What's wrong? Nanxian reached out to hold his face and leaned forward, her cool and smooth hair falling on his neck causing a slight itch. His breath suddenly sank, his Adam's apple slid, and his hand had reached out from the blanket, caressing her narrow waist. She was just a stone's throw away from him, her voice filled with uncontrollable joy, word by word. He Mingxiao, let's get divorced. He had a moment of foolishness, even thinking he had hallucinations. When he regained consciousness, Nanxian had already gotten out of bed. After glancing at the time, He Mingxiao pinched his eyebrows and got up to catch up with her, saying helplessly. What are you getting angry about again? What's going on? We'll do it tomorrow. His words abruptly stopped when he saw the large suitcases at the entrance, and his expression gradually became gloomy. What are you doing? Nanxian bent down to change her shoes and took a relaxed look at him, saying, I said, I want to divorce you. The marriage agreement states that we are a nominal couple, and you use me as a shield. I can divorce you at any time. Don't worry, I never married you for the money of your He family. If I get divorced, I won't take a copper coin from you. After that, I will entrust a lawyer to handle the procedures. The doorbell interrupted the conversation, and she turned to open the door. A young man in a red uniform stood at the door with a bright smile. Hello, I am Xiao Zhao, the fearless late-night mover, dedicated to serving you. I've worked hard for you so late. Nanxian invited him in and pointed to those large suitcases. Just help me move these out. Xiao Zhao waved his hand repeatedly and said, "It's not hard, it's not hard. You gave me such a high commission, and my colleagues envy me so much. I wish I had taken this order myself." Nanxian couldn't help but laugh and looked at him as if he was only in his early 20s, so she went and handed him another bottle of pure water. He Mingxiao hugged his arm and watched coldly. Seeing Nan Xian's gaze, he no longer glanced at himself, but instead cared about an insignificant porter, frowning so hard that he could strangle a fly. He stepped forward and grabbed her wrist with his big palm, his voice low. "Nanxian, divorce is not a child's play." Nanxian turned her head to look at him, with a smile on her face but mockery in her eyes. "He Mingxiao, divorce is not just a child's play, so should we get married? It was you who proposed to me with your own mouth and said, never leave, never give up. It was also an agreement you personally signed with me. I asked you, do you really love me?" Words pierced his heart like swords, and He Mingxiao's pupils tightened. He unconsciously let go of his strength and said, "I." There was a strange silence between the two for a few seconds. He closed his eyes and said in a hoarse voice, "Give me a chance, I will explain everything to you clearly. When I was here, you didn't explain. Now that I'm leaving, do you know how to keep me?" Nanxian sneered, "Thank you, Mr. He. You used to disdain the love you gave me, and now I disdain to accept it again." She pulled out her wrist, picked up her shoulder bag, and walked out the door without looking back. With a loud bang, the door was closed. He Mingxiao stood in place, his raised hand slowly falling down. I can't say what it feels like to truly leave that home in Nanxian's heart. Relaxation and relief exist, but more importantly, there is still nervousness and reluctance. Her love for He Mingxiao has never been false, even though 10 years of indifference have worn away all enthusiasm and expectations, and even though she has had countless thoughts of ending this marriage, deep down in her heart still retains the naive heart of 20 years old, pretending to be a married couple with him for 10 years like self-deception. But it wasn't until the day she was on her deathbed that she finally woke up in a flash. Marriage is not a necessary option in life, and love is not enough to make way for career. She and He Mingxiao had too many obstacles before, and love was already a luxury, so let's start over again. She chose to live for herself. And live even more exciting. Nanxian sat on the hotel terrace and blew the wind all night, finally calming down. At dawn, she began to check her work schedule. At first glance, she almost fell off the chair in shock. Just yesterday, she announced to her agent Tan Wei her decision to stay in the dark. Fanmeng Entertainment, to which Nanxian belongs, was acquired by He a few years ago. After marriage, her identity jumped from being an artist under her umbrella to being the boss's wife. In the past 6 months, she has either been on a honeymoon or has been in contact with upper-class circles like He without any announcement. Tan Wei had long guessed that she had ulterior motives. As a migrant worker, even though she felt regretful, she couldn't refuse the boss's decision and immediately rejected all the scripts and variety shows prepared for her. At this moment, Nanxian really wants to grab the ground with her head. If only I could be reborn a day earlier. Unfortunately, there hasn't been a function to withdraw messages in 12 years. After pondering for a while, she still bravely explained to Tan Wei and expressed her hope to continue developing in the entertainment industry. Unexpectedly, Tan Wei immediately replied. She made a somewhat confused expression and said hello after a while. Nanxian breathed a sigh of relief. After working together for so many years, she knew that although Tan Wei had a cold and reserved face, she was very reliable in her work. Sure enough, not long after she finished washing up, Tan Wei sent a new message. You haven't announced for half a year, and joining the group is too hasty now. Why don't you go on a variety show to brush your face? I have a new variety show on hand, and the director has been rejected and insists on inviting you. Take a look first. When she clicked on the file she sent and the variety show name jumped into her eyes, Nanxian was momentarily stunned. The first season of Uncover Mysteries, directed by Zheng Hangwei. Ding. He only mentioned this name in front of him the day before the car accident, but he didn't expect to see it again the day after his rebirth. She suddenly felt a sense of confusion in time and space, lost in thought for a while before continuing to look down. The variety show introduction was similar to what she remembered, but when she saw the guest selection, she slowly widened her eyes. 3 of the 4 permanent guests for the first season have been identified, all of whom are names that she remembers, but none of them are Wei Ziling. That's right, Nan Xian refused director Zheng's invitation in the first year because she decided to retire, and for the following 9 years, it was because of Wei Ziling. Prior to this, Wei Ziling had been developing overseas and her domestic popularity was not high, but it was through this variety show that she entered the domestic entertainment industry and accumulated a lot of popularity. However, the current situation is that Wei Ziling was not the originally scheduled permanent guest, which indicates that if Nan Xian accepted the invitation back then, there would be no problem with Wei Ziling. Nanxian's gaze fixed on the guest column. Her heart beat faster and faster like a drum, and suddenly her eyes became sharp, jumping back to the conversation with Tan Wei. I'll take it. A few days later, she met with He Mingxiao again. In the quiet and elegant room, the waiter set the tea on the table and quietly stepped back. Nanxian raised her chin to signal to the lawyer, then picked up a teacup and gently sipped. The man sitting opposite her clearly had no intention of drinking tea. He took a deep look at her and opened the divorce agreement handed over by the lawyer. His gaze fixed on the line of voluntarily leaving the house, and he frowned and said in a deep voice, I want to talk to you alone. The lawyer glanced at Nan Xian's face and walked out voluntarily. Nan Xian put down the teacup and looked up at him. After a few days without seeing him, he became much haggard and surprisingly showed a rare hint of fatigue. Nan Xian's eyes suddenly turned sour and she quickly averted her gaze. He stared at her in silence for a while, seeming to have a lot to say, but in the end, he just said, divorce is okay, at least let me compensate you. She suppressed her surging emotions and coldly uttered 3 words. No need. The severed lotus root is the most deadly, and she doesn't want to have any further involvement with him. However, He Mingxiao said to himself, I did hide something from you. I didn't consider your feelings and dragged you into my life without authorization. You are a good wife, but I couldn't fulfill my husband's responsibility. I'm sorry. Nanxian, I'm sorry. Nanxian curled her fingers tightly on her lap, and instinctively lowered her eyes. She knew very well that she couldn't resist He Mingxiao, and that's precisely what made her feel helpless. Although he was full of sharpness outside, everyone respected and feared him, but when faced with himself, he restrained his sharpness and used a gentle and tolerant appearance to bewitch her. Let her sink deep into it time and time again, until she can't extricate herself. Seeing her silent, He Mingxiao let out a light sigh. Even if it's fake, we were once a couple. I gave you 49% of Fanmeng's shares as a gift, which can be considered as a thank you for accompanying me for these 6 months. With the tip of his pen sliding, he signed his name behind another pre-prepared divorce agreement. When Nanxian looked up again, he had already left. She stared blankly at the empty space across from her, and her heart felt as if it had been hollowed out. It's okay, it's all over. She picked up the teacup and drank it all in one gulp, her eyes turning red from the heat and tears streaming down her face. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Hair Dyeing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Hair dyeing. The prosperous wedding of Nanxian and He Mingxiao is still talked about by many people, and in the blink of an eye, this couple, who have been praised by countless media as made in heaven, quietly ended their marriage. When this news was exposed, the headline news, hot search rankings, and even overseas trending rankings were dominated by the names of the 2 individuals, and the Chinese social media platform was almost completely paralyzed. Nanxian selectively ignored online evaluations and speculations about herself. After staying at home for several weeks, the heat of her divorce was finally suppressed by gossip about a well-known male star's infidelity. On this day, Ding He came to deliver the contract to her. Ding He, who has just graduated from university, still has some baby fat on his face. When he smiles, a pair of pleasing dimples rise at the corners of his mouth. His big black and white eyes are filled with the passion and fighting spirit of young people. Nanxian stared at her for a while, and a thought leaped out of her heart. Ding He noticed it and stopped her hand movements. "Sister, what's wrong? Do you think it would look good if I dyed my hair red?" Nanxian instinctively flicked her fingers at her temples. Ding He was noticeably stunned at the words. She blinked and burst into a big smile amidst Nan Xian's implicit anticipation, nodding forcefully. "Is that worth mentioning, sister? Even if you dye it white, it looks good. Don't you think it's too flamboyant and unconventional?" Ding He tilted his head and thought for a moment, maybe some people think this way, but if a person still has to look at others' faces and worry about how others perceive them every day while alive, it's so boring. I think it's important to only like oneself. Nan Xian looked at her with some trance, her heart shaking, and she suddenly understood why she had been obsessed with hair color before. In the first 20 years, Nan Xian was pampered by all her family members, without experiencing any hardship or injustice. She could say whatever she wanted and do whatever she wanted. After getting married, she entered the social circle of the top tier without any preparation, and from a middle-class family background, she was looked down upon by most people in this circle. They openly befriended her, but often mocked her behind the scenes. Several young ladies of the same age openly formed small groups to exclude her. Nanxian had suffered several hidden losses and was worried that the He family would be influenced by her. Therefore, she restrained her temper and was cautious in every way, afraid of saying too much and making too many mistakes. The depth of a wealthy family means that not only are there many taboos in social occasions, but there are also ways to dress, match, and wear jewelry for any occasion. Nan Xian, who grew up carefree, was very uncomfortable with these rules. However, for the sake of He Mingxiao, she forced herself to get used to them year after year. Unconsciously, she was smoothed out by this tightrope-like life. The unrestrained Nan Xian was locked in the depths of her heart by her. Later, even the director who personally made her famous expressed regret in an interview that Nanxian's unique spiritual energy had been eroded by her marriage. "Sister." Suddenly regaining her senses, Nan Xian slowly smiled and stood up to grab Ding He's shoulder. "Good girl, what you said is really good. Let's go, sister, please go get your hair done." So when Nan Xian was caught wearing a head of fiery red hair and carrying various branded packaging bags while shopping, Weibo was boiling again. #Nanxian's first appearance after divorce #Nanxian's red hair #what's wrong with Nanxian #the Xijiao Square has also exploded, with thousands of new posts added every minute of refresh, and netizens rushing to the first melon-eating scene with small benches. "I'll go, what's wrong with this sister? After divorce, let herself go. I don't know anything else." Nanxian's set of photos is really amazing. "I used to think that only non-mainstream people would dye red hair, but I didn't expect red straight hair to have such a high compatibility with her, like a live-action version of a Little Mermaid. The truth is, Nan Xian dyed her red hair and looked good because she looked good. Even if she shaved her head, a true beauty would still be a beauty. A crooked building, isn't it forbidden for actresses to dye their hair casually? Upstairs, at first glance, you seem to be missing out on everything. Nanxian is not an ordinary actress now. She is half the boss of Fan Meng, and it's not even a matter of minutes before she wants to dye her hair." Funny, Ding He sucked on his milk tea, flipped through the comments one by one, and his worried expression gradually relaxed. In the end, he couldn't help but chuckle. Nanxian poked her head and said, "What are you foolishly happy about?" Ding He showed her those posts about Quan Nanxian and said, "Sister, you just went on hot search again. Many people praise you for being beautiful." What she didn't say was that before today, almost all the online discussions about Nan Xian were about her divorce. Even though his group promptly debunked the rumors on the day the news spread and issued an announcement stating that the two were peacefully divorced, it still couldn't stop the spread of various fabricated false information. Social opinion is always more harsh on women, especially for famous female celebrities like Nan Xian. Netizens often like to speculate on the inside story in an unattractive way when they see it as irrelevant. This hair-dyeing hot search has suddenly gained a lot of popularity for Nan Xian, and the team took the opportunity to promote a wave of variety shows she will be participating in. For a moment, Nan Xian's popularity seemed to have returned to her explosive debut. At the same time, on the top floor of Yao building, there is the CEO's office. With a ding sound on his phone, He Mingxiao lifted his eyelids and glanced at him. SMS notification. Your contact, Wei Ziling, has sent a new message. Seeing the name, he furrowed his brows and instinctively shifted his gaze away, but soon he was taken aback and picked up his phone to unlock it. Wei Ziling. Mingxiao, are you okay? I just saw Nanxian dyeing her hair on a hot search, and I'm worried it might have any impact on your reputation. Nan Xian, dye your hair. He didn't reply, but opened Weibo first, and indeed saw his recently divorced ex-wife's name hanging on the top of the trending list. In the photo, Nan Xian is tall and elegant, standing in the crowd with her slender high heels that look almost 1.8 meters tall, and her waist-high red hair. She only painted a little pink, took off her sunglasses, and greeted the passers-by who recognized her. At this moment, a gust of wind blew up from somewhere, and the soft red hair scattered behind her was blown out. The strands of hair shone like light, covering her side. With a smile on her face, she lowered her gaze and brushed away a strand of hair blocking her cheeks. This stunning scene happened to be captured by the camera. These photos have been moved by countless marketing accounts, and the most popular one has even surpassed 100,000 likes, with people constantly commenting and sharing them below. He Mingxiao's gaze lingered for a long time on the photo of her smiling at passers-by, and his fingers zoomed in. The last time I saw her show such a pure and sincere smile without any falsehood was at the wedding 6 months ago. After his wedding night, his curse was not lifted, and he was even trapped inside the cat's body for 3 whole days. He was extremely angry and regretful, angry at listening to the slander of the wandering Taoist and hastily getting married, and even more regretful for dragging a beautiful person like Nan Xian into his eerie life. He is a cursed and ominous person, unable to get close to Nan Xian, let alone leave a child behind. I know she is allergic to cats, so I dare not even tell her the real reason, afraid that she will dislike me because of it. He Mingxiao didn't want to let go and didn't want her to hate him. After much thought, he had to use the agreement as a shield and hide his love deep in his heart. The happiness that can be stolen will eventually be like a flash in the pan, and the half-year beauty will completely collapse in the moment of signing the divorce agreement. His heart was filled with piercing pain, but he refused to move away from the gaze that fell on her smiling face, his knuckles tightly turning white as he held his phone. At this moment, there was a sudden knocking on the door. Jiang Tezu's voice came through the door panel and said, "Mr. He, the representative of Haichuan Group has arrived. The formal meeting will be held in 10 minutes. He Mingxiao's expression darkened, and he pressed the screen off button, lightly responding. The method of numbing the nerves with work is certainly effective, but when she returns home from work and stands in the house where they have lived together for half a year, her residual breath in the air seeps into her skin like poison, and her longing and pain rush like a tsunami, instantly drowning her." Sir, Chen's mother stood at the kitchen door, anxiously looking at He Mingxiao, who was standing in the living room feeling lonely and absent-minded, and called out softly. He Mingxiao regained his composure and sat down at the dining table with a soft nod. Chen's mother prepared dinner for him and was about to return to the kitchen when suddenly she stopped and took out a pink pearl earring from her apron pocket and placed it by the table. "This is what I found under the bed in the guest room while cleaning today. It should have been left by my wife that day." After a pause, she added softly, "She likes to wear these earrings the most. If she finds one missing, she will definitely be very sad." He Mingxiao was taken aback for a moment, his heart twitched slightly, and he raised his hand to put it in his pocket. That night, he tossed and turned until early morning, opening his phone several times to check the time. Finally, at 3 o'clock, he was so nervous that a thin sweat broke out from his forehead. He opened his photo album, which included stills, behind-the-scenes photos, red carpet photos, Reuters photos, and Station Sisters refined photos. More than 10,000 photos, without exception, were all taken by Nan Xian alone, and the latest ones are undoubtedly her red-haired photos today. He slowly flipped forward, thinking of something. His Adam's apple rolled slightly, and his ears began to heat up. Just think of her. Is that okay? End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Picking up a cat. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Picking up a cat. The next morning, Nanxian went downstairs to throw garbage, and suddenly caught a glimpse of a small black shadow flashing around the corner. Her masked hand paused and blinked in confusion. How do you feel like you've seen a cat? Who stole the pet from? There are quite a few pet owners in the community, but she didn't take this matter to heart. However, as soon as she went upstairs and walked out of the elevator door, she saw a small black cat squatting at her doorstep, looking up at the door sign. Nanxian stood still, a bit surprised. The little black cat heard footsteps, turned its head, blinked its green bean eyes twice, and lifted its paws to approach her. Nanxian instinctively tightened her mask and retreated in succession. She is severely allergic to cat hair. When she was a child, she only sat on the sofa where cats had been lying. At night, she developed papules all over her body and was taken to the hospital to hang a hanging bottle for several days. Since then, she has been far away from the cat and her home has always been stocked with allergy medicine. Seeing her so nervous, the little black cat was taken aback and quickly stopped moving. Then, it gently lifted one of its hind legs and looked at her pitifully. Miwu. Miwu. Noticing that the leg it lifted was trembling lightly and seemed to be injured, Nanxian was at a loss for a few seconds. With a sudden inspiration, she placed a plastic bag in her hand and leaned closer. Mimi, come here, don't be afraid. The little black cat let out a cheerful meow and hobbled up to her with 3 legs, lightly rubbing its head against her palm. Nanxian immediately softened her heart. Oh my, what a pity. When Ding He went to Nan Xian's house to deliver something to her, he saw her squatting on the balcony next to a cardboard box, fully armed, with her eyes, mouth, nose, and hands tightly blocked. Sister, what are you doing? She was a bit confused. I picked up a cat this morning. Nanxian waved at her. Didn't you always want to keep a cat? Come and take a look. Cat. Ding He's eyes lit up. Inside the cardboard box, a little black cat lay on its side on a soft cloth. Its body was not much longer than a human's palm, and its eyes were covered with a cloudy blue film, as if it had just reached full moon. Nanxian was grooming it with a small comb, and it was so comfortable that it squinted and snored. Its 2 furry front paws moved and stepped on the milk, revealing a dark chocolate-colored meat mat. So cute. Ding He was instantly adorable, holding his face in both hands and sighing. Nanxian poked at its small meat pad and said, well, if I'm not allergic, I'll take care of it myself. So far, it seems to have a lot of feline virtue. It was masturbated, hugged, and kissed. I went to the hospital for a check-up, and there was a small cut on the left hind leg. It's not a big problem, except for not being able to lick its own fur. Do you want it? I want it. Of course I want it. Ding He nodded fiercely and let out a puzzled, ah. Sister, what does Mauda mean? Nan Xian couldn't help but say the popular words from 22 years ago. She awkwardly coughed lightly. Women have female virtues, men have male virtues, and of course, cats also have cat virtues. Ding He suddenly realized and let out an oh. Without waiting for further questioning, Nan Xian gave her the seat. The idea of masturbating the cat instantly gained the upper hand, and she chuckled as she reached out to the little black cat, he, little cat. However, the next moment, the little black cat opened its eyes vigilantly and gave Ding He a paw, making a hee sound in its throat. The fur on its back stood up one by one, glaring angrily at her. Although the kitten's paws posed no threat to humans, Ding He was still startled. She withdrew her hand in fear and said, "Sister, it seems like it doesn't like me." Nanxian was also a bit puzzled. This little black cat has a good temper, even being obedient and clever when applying medicine. How could she see Ding He so excited? She tried to soothe it, but the little black cat quickly became gentle and kept rubbing its head against her fingers. "Maybe I was scared when I suddenly smelled your scent. You should just spend a little more time with it." However, the little black cat and Ding He's aura were at odds. 1 second ago, he was obediently snoring under Nan Xian's command. As soon as Ding He approached, he immediately bristled and let out a sigh, with a posture of, "If you dare to touch me, I will bite you." After tinkering all day, Ding He also understood. This little guy doesn't even care about himself. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. The Way Rich People Chase Wives. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. The Way Rich People Chase Wives. After Ding He left, Nanxian felt even more headache as she looked at the little black cat with its belly exposed for touch. She can't even keep a cat, saving it today is entirely out of kindness. A kitten like this that hasn't even shed its blue membrane can't survive in the city. I used to see that it had a good cat spirit and should be easy to adopt, but now the situation is. She let out a long sigh of distress and tapped its nose in an attempt to reason. "I know you want to stay at my house, but I really can't take care of you. Your secretions will make me sneeze, rash, and in severe cases, I will even die. Do you know?" The little cat's rolling motion suddenly stiffened, and it slowly withdrew its front paws, trying to scratch Nanxian's fingers, hanging its head with guilt. Nanxian just turned around and didn't notice its humanized movements. She asked around in the homeowner group, and no one lost the cat, so it is highly likely that it was a stray cat that sneaked into the community and accidentally bumped into her own home. So she contacted the homeless animal shelter and decided to send the little black cat there tomorrow to seek professional help. After feeding it goat milk at night, Nanxian packed all the milk powder and pastries she had prepared for it and placed them next to the cardboard box. Seeing it curled up in a corner, feeling dejected as if she knew she was going to be sent away, she couldn't bear it anymore and helped it comb its hair until it fell asleep before getting up to wash. As the night deepened, the room fell silent. The little black cat in the cardboard box slowly opened its eyes. The constant boiling heat inside his body made He Mingxiao realize that he was about to transform back into a human body. He stood up and placed his front paws on the wall of the cardboard box, striving to push his hind legs forward. Bang! The cardboard box finally flipped over and he stumbled and rolled out. Moonlight shone through the thin gauze curtain into the room, casting a hazy shadow on the walls. It grew rapidly from a small ball to a tall figure. He Mingxiao rubbed his swollen temples, pulled a sofa blanket around his lower body, and walked silently towards the master bedroom barefoot. Nan Xian fell asleep proficiently, with a good sleeping posture. She gently tilted her head towards the door, breathing lightly and continuously. He Mingxiao leaned against the door frame and stared for a long time, his eyes flickering as if he had made a decision. Downstairs, Jiang Teshu had been waiting for a long time. When he heard footsteps, he glanced up at He Mingxiao, who seemed to have just come out of the bathhouse. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly, and he silently opened the car door for him. The way wealthy people pursue their wives is really unique. The next day, as soon as Nanxian woke up, she found that the little black cat was missing. She searched the entire community and even checked the surveillance footage at the property management office. However, strangely enough, the cameras located near their building suddenly malfunctioned for some reason that night and were unable to capture what had happened. A few days later, the imperial capital suddenly cooled down. She was thinking about the little black cat in her heart and went out to look for it for a few more days. With worry and anxiety, she looked a bit haggard. That morning, she passed by a breakfast stall outside the community. The landlady looked up at her and suddenly remembered something. "Oh my," she said, "Beauty, I seem to have seen the black cat you asked me to pay attention to before yesterday." Nanxian's eyebrows lit up with joy. "Really?" "Yes, it seems like yesterday afternoon, strolling across the street." The landlady leaned her hands together and measured the distance. "It's so big, with black hair all over, and a pinch of white at the tip of her tail." Upon hearing these words, Nanxian's excitement immediately subsided. Seeing this, the landlady was puzzled and said, "What's wrong, isn't it the one you found?" She nodded and told her that the little cat she was looking for was all black. "It's all black, then I haven't seen it before." The landlady shook her head with some regret, comforted her a few words, and then went to greet the other guests. This scene was completely captured by the person in a black sedan on the roadside. He Mingxiao withdrew his gaze, lowered his gaze and pondered for a moment, then gently curved his lips. "Go to the nearest pet store." Nan Xian was awakened by the sound of scratching her door. The variety show on TV was still playing, and she took her phone and glanced at the time, which happened to be 3:30 p.m. in the afternoon. She got up and put on her slippers, but no one was detected in the cat's eye surveillance. She opened the door in confusion and looked left and right. Miwu. She instinctively lowered her head and then looked at a small ball crouching at the door in disbelief, her drowsiness dissipating from her mind. These round big eyes and messy fur are not exactly her little black cat. "Did you come back to find me?" she exclaimed in surprise. The little black cat let out a milky meow and shook its head, revealing the collar on its neck. "This is..." She put on gloves and picked up the little black cat, flipping over the copper plate hanging under the collar. The bronze plaque is engraved with a string of phone numbers and addresses, surprisingly located in the next building. "So you're a cat with a owner." She spoke with a grateful tone and nodded at its nose with a smile. "I thought you had escaped to wander, which made me worried for several days." "Bad cat. Why haven't you learned to lick your own hair yet? Isn't your master helping you comb your hair?" Nanxian flipped out the small comb and helped it smooth out the messy hair on its body, half-jokingly saying. The little black cat lay on its side at her feet, blinking at the words and making a pleasing meow meow. After combing its hair, it ran to scratch the door. Knowing that it had a master, Nanxian didn't leave it behind. She watched it skillfully walk into the unit door of the next building before turning back home. A big stone fell from her heart, and she relaxed again. Her thin cheeks quickly regained their health. A few days later, after meeting with Director Zheng, the filming schedule for Unveiled Mysteries officially began. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Mr. He comes to brush the sense of existence. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Mr. He comes to brush the sense of existence. The first episode of Unveiling Strange Tales was filmed in a valley in the hinterland of southwestern China. The theme of this issue is goo. The ancients gathered many poisonous insects together, allowing them to devour and kill each other, leaving only goo. Sister, do you believe that there is really goo magic in this world? Ding, he asked softly, flipping through the introduction on Baidu. Nanxian opened her eyes and glanced at her phone page, shook her head, but remained silent. If it were in the past, she would definitely not hesitate to answer disbelief, but having experienced rebirth firsthand, she wouldn't say some things that way. The plane landed smoothly and the group low-key checked into the hotel. The first night was a formal meeting of 4 guests, while filming a trailer. The production team arranged an outdoor dinner, and Nan Xian naturally made the final appearance as the only female guest. She sat with makeup on, while Ding He reviewed the information of the other 3 guests for her. Lang Zhua, 35 years old, is a singer and lyricist with a good temper and no taboos. Gu Changlin, 28 years old, an actor, speaks straightforwardly, is prone to violence, and dislikes mentioning personal emotions. Yu Lin, 19 years old, is a new singer who has just entered the industry. He has been a trainee abroad for a few years and currently doesn't understand his personality. However, as a senior, you don't need to pay too much attention to this. Nanxian nodded and confirmed once again that her makeup and hair were fine. She stood up and walked towards the door, took a light breath, and pushed open the door. A carefully arranged scene, a bonfire burning in the darkness, and neatly arranged cameras. Hello everyone, I'm Nan Xian. Please take good care of me. After a polite greeting, the four of them sat down and Lang Zhuo took the initiative to start the conversation. This is everyone's first time recording this kind of reality show, are you nervous? Gu Changlin leaned against a rattan chair, fiddling with his earrings for a moment, and casually replied, why are you nervous? There aren't so many gods and ghosts in this world. We're here to uncover secrets, not to explore. Lang Zhuo gave him a meaningful glance and quickly turned to Nan Xian, handing over a piece of honey melon. Xiao Nan. Can I call you Xiao Nan? Nan Xian stood up and took it, sure, Teacher Lang Zhuo. The theme of the first episode is Gu, and it's inevitable to come into contact with snakes and insects. Are you afraid? She shook her head and said, I have been brave since I was young and not afraid of these things. How could I be afraid? It's just that I've been teased a lot in my previous life and got used to it long ago. But with a sneer, Gu Changlin raised his eyebrows and looked at her. Nanxian, you are indeed not afraid. Your hair is so red that it looks like a red chain snake. Even if you look at it, Gu Boo Boo will run away. Why do you say, snake scorpion beauty? As soon as these words were spoken, the atmosphere instantly became subtle. Yu Lin, who had remained silent, instinctively sat up straight and silently put down the melon in his hand. Lang Zhuo looked at Gu Changlin in surprise and was about to make a comeback when Nan Xian spoke up first. Snake and scorpion beauties. She caressed the large red wave curls hanging on her chest. This is good. I will leave this persona in the future. Whoever dares to trouble me will be poisoned to death. Gu Changlin didn't expect her to have this reaction, her smile froze and her face looked a bit unsightly. Seeing this, Nan Xian covered her lips and chuckled lightly. I was just joking, do you mind, Teacher Gu? Of course I don't mind, Gu Changlin said calmly as he turned his head. Nan Xian blinked in the direction of Director Zheng again and said, Director Zheng, don't cut this section in. Director Zheng held Taiban and covered his face, clearly suppressing his smile. Yu Lin took the opportunity to liven up the atmosphere and said, Sister Nan Xian, don't worry, Director Zheng will definitely cut it in. Nan Xian pretended to be panicked and said, that's terrible. I still have to rely on a pure character to make a living. What if I can't get the show in the future? She deliberately teased herself, causing the whole room to burst into laughter. The awkward atmosphere just now was swept away, and soon we started talking about the next topic. As the night grew deeper, everyone bid farewell and returned to their respective rooms. Ding He helped Nan Xian open her hair clip and muttered discontentedly, Gu Changlin has no grudges or grievances with you. Why did he suddenly say that kind of thing? Is snake and scorpion beauty a good word? It's really speechless. Nanxian also wondered that she had never had any interaction with Gu Changlin. Although the other party had always been a character with a bad temper and difficult to get along with in the circle, the sudden difficulties tonight were too inexplicable. A flash of inspiration flashed in her mind. Could it be related to Wei Ziling? I haven't heard of them knowing each other, but I can't rule out having a personal relationship. Moreover, in her previous life, Wei Ziling was not a guest choice that Director Zheng favored. If she was recommended by Gu Changlin, then it would make sense. Why is she everywhere? Nanxian let out a soft click. Suddenly, She heard the sound on her phone and turned it on. It was a new friend edition request. Just as I was about to ignore it, I suddenly saw that the other person's avatar was a little black cat. Nanxian blinked and zoomed in to see the messy fur, collar around her neck, and blue mung bean eyes. Isn't this the little black cat she took care of a few days ago? Did the cat owner come to find it? She agreed, and the other party quickly sent a message. Hello, I am the cat owner of Building A9. I moved in a few days ago and my friend told me the message you posted in the owner group. Thank you for taking care of my cat. Sure enough. After thinking for a moment, Nan Xian replied, it's just a matter of hands, you're welcome. The other party entered for a long time. Do you want to see a cat? The topic turned too quickly, and Nan Xian couldn't help but laugh and cry. Xianchi Canhua. Ah. Okay, the next second, the dialogue box was instantly filled with cat photos. The little black cat tilted its head to look at the camera, the little black cat was sunbathing on the terrace, and the little black cat was holding a toy ball. Nan Xian was adorable, holding her phone and flipping back and forth. Xianchi Canhua. It's so cute. Thank you. Xianchi Canhua. By the way, is it a male cat or a female cat? Public. Xianchi Canhua. Do you have a name? The other party entered again for a long time. Not yet. Would you be willing to help him pick up one? When Nanxian woke up the next day, her eyes were a bit green, which startled Ding He. Sister, were you a mosquito that you shot all night last night? Nanxian touched her nose and said, cough, I didn't sleep well. In fact, she discussed the name of the half-night cat with last night. The other party is obviously very picky in nature. She said it's better to call it Cobalt than to call it So Black, he said it's too common, she said it's called Dark Clouds. Dark clouds are not common, and he said the signs are not good, she said her name is Blake, it's foreign. He said that Chinese cats don't take foreign names anyway. In the end, there was no discussion about what it was, and she was so tired that she fell asleep. Fortunately, this morning it was entering the mountains, and the bus journey was nearly 4 hours, so she could sleep to her destination completely. The bus was bumpy all the way, swaying and swaying. She had several dreams in this swaying and swaying, but when she was awakened, she was still confused. She helped herself off the railing, but before she could recover her composure, her gaze turned and her mind immediately became clear. A few meters away, He Mingxiao and Director Zheng stood together, chatting and laughing happily. Lang Zhuo walked over to Nan Xian, who was dumbfounded, with a look on his face as he watched the show. He is always the biggest investor in our reality show, afraid that something might go wrong. I'm here to personally supervise it, he said. Nan Xian. I'm not buying it. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Venting her anger. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Venting her anger. During the recording, He Mingxiao stood next to Director Zheng. He was wearing a gray hoodie and khaki casual pants, with sunglasses on his nose and long legs swaying leisurely. Jiang Tezu held a sunshade umbrella next to him, and a small fan in his other hand. This wealthy young man's demeanor is really eye-catching, causing the young girls in the directing team to sneak a peek and blush, whispering together. Coincidentally, Nan Xian's position is directly opposite him. She awkwardly pressed her toes to the ground, trying not to pay attention to him, but in the remaining light, she could still see his bangs constantly swaying in the wind, and her mood fluctuated like a swing. Fortunately, this part passed quickly, and the next step is to select rooms. The 4 rooms are all local homes, with the best built in a high valley with good lighting and distinctive layout. The worst is a small earthen house, located in a remote area that even takes 2 miles to fetch water. Nanxian was the first to draw and was very lucky to get the best one. The second one was Yulin, and he drew the third one, which was quite good. Next was Gu Changlin, who was noticeably stunned when he reached into the box. He took out the note and looked at it, his face immediately clouded with dark clouds. Lang Xian leaned forward and burst into laughter, jokingly saying, "Changlin, it seems like you're not lucky today. You still chose the worst of the two." Gu Changlin forced a smile and said, "It's okay, I'm a man. Eating some bitterness is nothing." Speaking in this way, he gave Nan Xian a faint glance from an angle that the camera couldn't capture. Nan Xian was speechless, not knowing how she had offended him again, but suddenly her heart moved and her gaze instinctively turned to He Mingxiao. He was obviously waiting for her to come over, staring at her through his sunglasses, his thin lips lightly curling a meaningful curve, and his right fingertip lightly tapping twice while holding his arm. Nan Xian is familiar with this action, and once he successfully calculates, it will be like this. What does he mean by that? Implying that he gave Gu Changlin the worst room. Even after getting married and divorced, do you still want to invite credit from yourself? Nan Xian pursed her lips, lifted her chin, and turned her head like a proud white peacock before leaving. He Mingxiao was slightly stunned and couldn't help but smile lightly. The stilted building where Nan Xian lives has 2 floors. On the first floor, there is a family of 3, with young parents and a 13-year-old girl. The girl's name is Ajiao. She has honey-colored skin, bright black eyes, and is dressed in local ethnic costumes. As soon as she walks, she rings the clanging of bells. Nanxian used a bag of sugar to win over Ajiao and put in a lot of words. There used to be a big Gu village here, with ancestors being Gu sorcerers and a tradition of making Gu. However, many people died during the Great Rebellion a few decades ago. The surviving villagers hid the books that recorded the Gu technique in an unknown place. Later, when the villagers died, the inheritance of Gu technique was cut off. So, you know there are Gu, but you don't know how to make Gu? Nan Xian asked. Ajiao nodded, glanced at the camera, and whispered in her ear with her hand closed to her mouth, "My auntie said, Gu is all deceitful, there is no Gu technique at all." Nanxian also imitated her appearance. "What does the poisonous snake embroidered on your body mean?" Ajiao blinked and looked at her in surprise. "Sister, didn't you know that snakes were immortals in ancient times and could protect us?" Nanxian suddenly realized, so it's like this. Sister has gained a lot of knowledge. Not only snakes, but also spiders and scorpions, all of which have good and meaningful meanings. "Oh, my aunt asked me to go eat, goodbye sister." Watching Ajiao jump down the stairs, the sound of bells accompanied by the sound of the stream, Nanxian held her face in contemplation. The night in the valley arrived early, and the 4 of them exchanged their harvest information at Lang Zhuo's house. Lang Zhuo walked around the entire village, roughly understanding the terrain, and discovered many snakes and insects that were rarely seen elsewhere. He was an insect enthusiast who privately enjoyed collecting specimens. Gu Changlin was ordered by the owner of the house to fetch water for the whole afternoon, and was so tired that he didn't want to say a word and didn't get any clues. Nanxian told everyone the little girl's words and then turned her head to look at Yulin. Yulin rubbed his head and felt a bit embarrassed. I ate quite a lot of delicious food today. Others. In summary, everyone did not receive any valuable clues, so they dispersed. Nanxian was walking down the path with a lantern in her hand, and her camera brother suddenly spoke up, "Nanxian teacher, if there is a special task completed, you will receive important clues to solve the mystery of Gu Shu. But if you cannot complete it, you will lose all the subsequent clues. Are you willing to accept it?" Nanxian was a bit surprised. Before coming, she was not informed that there would still be special tasks. "Do we need to make a decision now?" "You can choose to accept it at any time." "Oh, this is a benefit for female guests." She raised her eyebrows. The cameraman nodded. She pondered for a moment. "It's only been a day now, it's still early. I'll consider it first." During the conversation, I had already arrived at the small building. Just went up to the 2nd floor and saw the person in front of her, her face changed slightly. "Why are you here?" He Mingxiao withdrew his gaze from looking around and turned to look at her, revealing a gentle smile. I'm not used to living in a tent. The production team said there's another room here. If you mind, I can. No need, Mr. He, where do you like to live? Nanxian pretended to smile and slammed her door shut. As soon as she entered the room, her face instantly collapsed and she angrily pointed in the opposite direction, cursing softly, He Mingxiao, you did it on purpose. At this moment, her phone rang and she put away her emotions to open the message, which was actually sent by a photo of a little black cat. I've figured out what name to give him. Sincerity. What? South, Nan Xian was puzzled. Why, is there any meaning? My favorite person's surname is Nan. Oh, it's a coincidence. Nanxian was about to reply when the other party sent another message. Her name is Nan Xian. Suddenly seeing her name, Nanxian almost dropped her phone. She was stunned for a while without thinking how to answer, and quickly flashed through words such as illegitimate food and tracking in her mind. Send me a screenshot of the lock screen wallpaper, which was taken by a passerby the day she just dyed her red hair. I am a fan of Nan Xian. Nanxian instantly regained her senses and slowly let go of her lifted heart. So it's my own fan. But this is really a coincidence, accidentally adding it to one's own fans, Xianshi Canhua. Is that right? What do you like about her? The other party inputted for a long time, and Nanxian waited eagerly with her phone in hand. A large area pops up in the dialog box. Kindness, intelligence, beauty, dedication, good acting skills, and sincere treatment of people. Fantastic rainbow farts followed one after another, and Nan Xian became more and more ashamed as she looked at them. She collapsed on the bed, covered her face and chuckled, steadying her floating thoughts. She typed and asked him. You know her so well, have you liked her for a long time? Debut fan. Then I posted a few commemorative posters of her debut. It's been over 3 years now. Nanxian couldn't help but click twice, feeling a bit moved. By the way, what kind of job do you do? She was taken aback, her fingers swiped on the keyboard, and suddenly felt blessed to her soul. Xianshi Canhua. Coincidentally, I still know your idol. Xianshi Canhua. Nan Xian is filming a reality show, and I am the program team planner. After replying, her face couldn't help but blush, but she still gritted her head and said. Xianshi Canhua. Can I get her signature for you? Do you want it? He Mingxiao, on the other end of his phone, leisurely leaned against the sofa and smiled lightly when he saw the news. Of course I do. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. General He's routine. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. General He's routine. The next morning, Nanxian woke up to the high-pitched singing of roosters one after another. The village is shrouded in thin mist, and the air is filled with cool water vapor. Pushing open the window, a hazy green atmosphere fills the eyes. She stood on the corridor wearing a thin blanket, gazing out at the overlapping mountains in the distance when suddenly she heard footsteps coming from behind. She turned her head and coincidentally collided with He Mingxiao's gaze. He Mingxiao stopped 2 steps behind her, his gaze resting on her shoulder. The temperature is low in the morning, don't catch a cold. She gathered the thin blanket that slid down her arm, turned around, and remained silent. The atmosphere was momentarily frozen, interrupted by a thumping sound of going upstairs. Ding! He appeared holding the thermos box and looked up to see He Mingxiao. She quickly slowed down and said, "Good day, Mr. He." Then she placed the thermos box on the small table in the corridor and served a steaming bowl of red bean soup. Nanxian sat down at the table, scooped a spoonful of soup and brought it into the mouth, then pursed her lower lip imperceptibly. Add 2 spoonfuls of sugar. He Mingxiao suddenly said ding. He was stunned for a moment, then instinctively answered okay, and added 2 spoonfuls of white sugar to the soup. Nanxian's mouth twitched slightly, pretending not to hear and continuing to drink soup. However, the next second, with a creak, He Mingxiao sat on another rattan chair opposite her, stretching out his limbs relaxed and looking at her with a smile on his face. Nanxian took a deep breath and smirked. Mr. He, what's up with you? He Mingxiao blinked and said, I'm here for breakfast too. As soon as he finished speaking, Jiang Tezu appeared with a large and small box, neatly and quickly placing breakfast in front of He Mingxiao. Nanxian glanced up. Crab roe buns, exquisite shrimp dumplings, ribs with soy sauce, and a small bowl of congee with fish slices. They are all things she likes. This guy. It was definitely intentional. Nanxian gritted her teeth silently. Mr. He, there's another table over there. She gestured towards the end of the corridor. He Mingxiao glanced at it and answered with a straight face, it's more delicious for 2 people to eat, and the scenery here is better. Nan Xian. Really? I don't believe it. I ordered a lot, do you want to try it? He picked up a shrimp dumpling and pretended to put it into her bowl. Nan Xian was startled and quickly picked up her red bean soup to run away. No, I'm full. Mr. He, please take your time. He Mingxiao withdrew his hand and put the shrimp dumplings into his mouth, chewing them slowly and swallowing them. He didn't know what he was thinking, and his lips curved with pleasure. I had a cramped breakfast this morning, so much so that throughout the morning, Nanxian's mind kept recalling the crystal-clear shrimp dumplings and the slender and beautiful hands holding chopsticks. Gulu. Unexpectedly, Yulin, who was walking next to her, turned his head and glanced at her. Nanxian couldn't help but feel a slight blush as they met. It seems like it's almost noon, and I'm also a bit hungry. How about we go eat something? Yulin coughed lightly with his fist against his lips. This child has a keen eye and can give people steps, so Nan Xian readily agreed. The two met by chance, and Nan Xian was aimlessly searching for clues when she met Yulin, who had just woken up, so the two temporarily formed an alliance. Yulin took her to a small stilted building. There lived an elderly woman in her 60s in the building, who was particularly hospitable and invited them to sit down and drink tea. She also served them a pot of steaming sour fish soup. Fish is a unique rice field fish here, completely non-fishy, tender enough to melt with just a sip. Paired with sour and spicy soup, it tastes so delicious that even the tongue can swallow it. With this pot of fish, Nanxian ate half a bowl more rice than usual. After dinner, while chatting and eating, Nan Xian was speculating where the production team would hide the clues when she saw her wife looking at them. Little girl, are you looking for goo? Coincidentally, I have something related to goo here. As soon as they finished speaking, the two of them brushed their heads together and looked at her. Nanxian's eyes lit up, and she sat down next to the old lady with a small stool. Grandma, really? Can you show us? My wife readily agreed and got up to go to the bedroom. Yulin cheered low and said, Sister, you're so amazing. Yesterday when I came to grab a meal, my grandmother didn't even mention anything about goo to me. Nanxian chuckled and said, You only focused on eating yesterday, and others can't find a chance to give clues. Yulin's face turned slightly red, and he suddenly leaned his upper body over. His bright eyes looked at her from bottom to top, full of anticipation. So. Is this what we found together? A 19-year-old boy still carries the youthfulness and childishness, acting coquettishly with the intention of pleasing others, like a watermelon just lifted from a well in midsummer. The middle bite is sweet and icy, filling the entire mouth. Nanxian stared at him for a while, then calmly averted her gaze and said, Of course, we are allies. As she spoke, the old lady had already brought over a clue, which was a book with Journey to the Fortress written on the cover. Hey, why is this? Yulin was surprised. Journey notes. Nanxian opened it and found a series of incomprehensible words written on the title page, seemingly names of people. The second page was the main text, recording the strange stories and anecdotes about Gu Shu that the protagonist of the travelogue heard while living in this village. On May 13, 1950, I met two young people who came here to seek help. The two were unmarried couples, but the man claimed to have fallen in love with a love Gu, and deeply fell in love with the woman's close friend. With 1,000 years of sadness and loss, I couldn't forget. The woman came here to seek a way to relieve Gu. However, from my observation of the man's demeanor, it seemed that he was not a sign of being bewitched, but rather a message from the heart. Upon seeing the last sentence, Yulin immediately slammed the table in anger and said, "Scumbag. Even if it's just a love story, why do you say you've been bewitched? Bah. Don't get excited, it's all stories." Nan Xian flipped to the next page. On December 4, 1951, an elderly man with white hair came to the village. His neck was wrapped in a thick cloth strip, and his appearance was obvious. The old man claimed to be enmity with someone, and the other person gave him a throat-locking poison, causing him to have a swollen throat and difficulty breathing, as if he had been tightly locked in his throat. In severe cases, he could not even eat and was in great pain. Yulin instinctively touched his neck and said, "Sister, what do you think?" Nanxian's gaze lingered on the line of swollen throat and poor breathing, and a conjecture flashed through her mind, but she couldn't be certain, so she just shook her head. "Let's continue to search for other clues." The two bid farewell to the old lady, but unexpectedly, as soon as they stepped out, they met Gu Chonglin head-on. The three of them stopped together and looked at each other through a wooden fence door. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Eating a Meal with Me. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Eating a Meal with Me. Gu Chonglin saw Yulin holding something in his hand, his eyes flickered, and he took the initiative to step forward. "Yulin, have you found a clue? Do you want to share it with me?" Yulin glanced at Nan Xian and saw that she was pursing her lips without speaking, so he stuffed the travelogue into her hand and spread his hand at Gu Chonglin innocently. "Brother, you misunderstood. This was found by Sister Nan Xian, not mine." Gu Chonglin clearly didn't believe it and said, "I saw you both come out of it together. Are you allies?" Yulin continued with an innocent face, "We're just eating together." Unexpectedly, this seemingly innocent child had so many ulterior motives. Gu Chonglin's mouth twitched slightly and turned to look at Nan Xian. "Nan Xian, you." Just as she spoke, she was interrupted by Nan Xian. "Teacher Gu, why don't we exchange clues and see if anyone is at a disadvantage?" "Do you think so?" "Of course, but I haven't found any clues yet." Nanxian smiled inexplicably and said, "Teacher Gu, stop pretending. It's all exposed." Gu Chonglin's expression stiffened, and he instinctively reached out and leaned behind him. However, the clue he had sandwiched between his pants was still well hidden and not exposed. "I was scammed." His face turned ugly, and his gaze fixed on Nan Xian like a sword. Without waiting for him to say anything, Yulin took a step forward and blocked his line of sight. He smiled and said, "Brother, you're not sincere anymore. We just found a clue. You're just trying to trick a white wolf with empty hands. We won't do this loss-making business." Gu Chonglin's face had calmed down and he said, "So you are indeed allies." Yulin's eyes rolled and suddenly thought of something. He smiled heartily and said, "Yes, and I also promised Sister Nanxian that I will be her little follower in the first episode. I will help her win the Explorer medal." Nanxian was taken aback at the words and looked at him in surprise. "When did he say that?" Gu Chonglin's gaze swept around between the two, chuckled twice, and left a sinister message, "Then I wish you success first," before turning towards another path. After his figure disappeared from sight, Yulin Kai patted his chest with fear and said, "It's so close. I thought I couldn't keep this clue. Turning around, he noticed that Nan Xian was looking at him with a scrutinizing gaze. He blinked and his face suddenly turned red. "Sister, what I just said is true. I really want to help you." Nanxian hesitated and said, "Is that so? Why?" They have only officially known each other for less than 24 hours, so they talked a few more words during last night's party. Nanxian doesn't believe that he will help her for no reason. "But I heard him say, because I am your fan, sister." Nanxian. Another fan. Seeing her not speaking, Yulin thought to himself, "When I was in my second year of high school, I watched your childhood thoughts with my classmates. Later on, we all thought you were the first love of our dreams, beautiful, pure, generous, and elegant." Nanxian interrupted him with tears and laughter. "That was all 3 years ago, and now I have nothing to do with Qingchun." Yulin was taken aback for a moment, then panicked and waved his hand. No, I'm not because of your innocence. I like you, not the character you play." The sudden confession caught her off guard, and Nanxian awkwardly glanced at the camera, attempting to shift the topic. "Are you not afraid that your fans will lose followers when they see this segment?" Yulin scratched his head and chuckled. "I was taken out of my account right after I debuted. They all know I like you, know we're going to do variety shows together, and celebrate my success in following celebrities." Nanxian. "Alright, forget that this is 2012, and everyone's views on the personal emotions of artists are quite tolerant. So I will protect you, find clues for you, and help you win a medal." Yulin clenched his fist and swore confidently. After all the words were said, Nanxian couldn't help but agree, silently praying that this segment would be edited out in the later stage. If it gets too big, it's still a small matter for fans to argue with each other. In case He Mingxiao finds out, that guy obviously has ideas for himself. His personality has always been strong and decisive, and he can't tolerate others competing with him. In her past life, she faded out of the entertainment industry, but she often saw Yulin's name in news gossip. At the age of 21, he created several songs that became popular all over the internet, becoming the top of the new generation of Chinese music. At the age of 25, he broke into the European and American music industry with his song South Wind, and won several awards, even receiving a nomination for an Oscar in the music industry. She doesn't want to be stuck at the starting point of her life just because of herself, as a talented and promising young woman. This is the first time Nan Xian has taken the initiative to find He Mingxiao after her divorce. She knocked on his door. The waiting process has never been so long. Just as she thought no one inside was planning to leave, the door finally opened. A strong hand grabbed her wrist and gently pulled her back. "I was taking a shower just now and didn't hear a knock on the door." He Mingxiao's tone was clearly filled with a smile. "What are you trying to do with me so late?" The slightly ambiguous ending made Nanxian blush unconsciously. She withdrew her hand and tried to ignore his bare chest, looking seriously into his eyes. "Mr. He, I would like to tell you something serious." He Mingxiao curved his eyes in a very good mood. "We have already divorced, so I hope you don't interfere with my life, especially my personal feelings, and don't implicate others because of it." She paused and her tone slowed down. "For you, the outcome of some things can be changed by just using your mouth, but for others, it may come at a very high cost." He Mingxiao narrowed his eyes and a dangerous light flashed in his eyes. "Are you implying me not to touch Yulin?" Nanxian was startled and her hand hanging on her side clenched in an instant. She didn't expect him to know so quickly, and what worries her even more is that he might have already made some moves. As Yulin's image of bringing glory to the country flashed through her mind, she gritted her teeth and said, "Yes, that's him. He's only 19 years old and just a novice child. Don't make things difficult for him." He Mingxiao looked at Nan Xian with a heavy gaze and said, "You care about him a lot. Why, for a change of taste, you like Xiao Bailian?" He Mingxiao. Nan Xian was angry and widened her eyes. glaring angrily at him. Okay, I'm joking, I know which one you like the most. He intentionally or unintentionally brushed his fingers over his neat 8-pack abs and straightened himself up. I can promise you, but as you know, I am a businessman who only focuses on profit. If I promise you not to touch him, then what benefits can I get? Seeing his attitude ease, Nanxian breathed a little sigh of relief and said helplessly, "What do you want?" After recording, accompany me to have a meal. She nodded and said, "Sure, but the location is up to me to decide." He Mingxiao regained his smile and said, "I've started looking forward to it. It's cold at night, remember to cover it with an extra layer of blanket." Nanxian didn't turn her head and slammed the door shut. He shook his head and chuckled, turned around to return to the room, opened his phone, and sent a message. "Don't touch him for now, keep a close eye on him." Small Theater Nanxian fell asleep in a fit of anger, chasing after the mini version of He Mingxiao with a wolf tooth stick in her dream and beating him, making him cry and call his mother. The next day, He Mingxiao woke up and suddenly felt some pain in his back. He instinctively helped his waist. Jiang Tezuk caught a glimpse of this scene, his pupils trembling, and he quietly searched with his phone, "What should I do if my boss has kidney deficiency at the age of 25 this year?" End of this chapter.